Welcome back to Carl Travels. Today I want to talk to you about van life. And is it all that it's cracked up to be?
Hey there, fellow adventurers. Step right into the whirlwind world of my travel channel. I'm Carl, part-time traveling musician maestro, and the rest of the time, I'm the mastermind behind some seriously zany videos, dishing out top-notch tips for globetrotters. And guess what? Sometimes I even transform into a horse. If you're up for a wild ride through my offbeat escapades, hang tight and join the fun.
During 2020, the COVID period, I think this was maybe the peak of the whole van life period, where people couldn't go to bars or clubs or do any of those kind of things that we were normally allowed to do. I, for one, personally, did get a little sucked into the whole van life movement. I was living in far north Queensland. A lot of people up there buy vans, travel in Australia, come back and then sell their vans again. So it is a very popular place to get vans and to do this van life dream. What I didn't realize is it wasn't exactly how all the people on Instagram portray it. And I'm still seeing this all the time about people really glamorizing van life. Now, I want to get into some of the good things and some of the bad things, and maybe you can chime in and express your opinions, because I would like to say I think everyone will have their own different and unique experience when it comes to van life. Now, a lot of this will also come down to what your budget is and what kind of van you have, and maybe also who you're traveling with. I traveled around the entire of Australia in my van. Well, actually in 3 vans, because my first van broke down and is sitting at a gas station, probably still in the middle of the Nullarbor. There was a mechanic there who offered to buy it from me. Well, no, who offered to take it off my hands for free. It had blown a head gasket, so I didn't really have any better offer than just to get rid of it, because it was going to take a month for the parts to come and cost more to fix than it actually did the van. That is one reality of van life. Yes, cars do break down, but that could happen to anyone. But do understand that when you make your home on wheels, it can break down, and then you could lose your home. Now, back to what I was saying before. I'm sure we all have our different horror stories. It's the influencer dream that I'm not exactly sold on.
Travel is life. Travel is van life. Cute. That's funny. So did you park out front? Oh my God, I am at this gorgeous, picturesque parkade just around the corner. Oh, okay. I'm at the Walmart across the street. Love it. Yeah. Yeah, it's great because they have a place where I can empty my shit bucket, and then I can bathe in the sink after all the crackheads are done. That is so convenient.
What I mean by that is, yes, on Instagram, you always see these people opening up their car doors and coming out to some picture-perfect beach. Now, I'll tell you what, I did a lap of Australia, and there was very few places like that. I would say, out of all the places I traveled to in Australia, I could probably only think of 1 or 2 out of the 500 or 600 towns and places that I visited throughout my journey. Most of the time, you're not actually allowed to park at any beaches. If you do, this is illegal. And you'll probably get a knock on your door from the city council or the police saying, hey, you're not meant to be here, and by the way, here's a big fine. Has that happened to you before? Now, one other thing I want to talk to you about van life is, yes, the size of your van. And this can be quite important. So, over my travels, I had 3 different vans. The first one I started with was a Kia Preccio. Now, I was lucky, I managed to get one of these unfitted out vans for just 3,000 Australian dollars. And I thought that was a pretty good deal, apart from the fact that it blew up a year later, but still, these days, it's hard to find any kind of van under $10,000, and they've got over 300,000 kilometers on the clock. So be aware, any of these vans that have been done up, a lot of the time, they've been sold and resold and then resold, and, you know, they're not that reliable. But look, we all take a chance when buying any car. Do get it checked out by a mechanic. Now, back to the issue of the size of the van. So first I had a Kia Preccio. I could fit a bed, I've had a TV, I even had a boat underneath the bed. And so sure, I did have all these accessories, but there are a couple of times when you would really miss certain luxuries like a toilet. Now, while there is a lot of great public toilets around Australia, when you get to kind of the Northern Territory or Western Australia, well, it's kind of no man's land there. And sometimes you just really need to take a shit. And what I've found on all these van life videos is that no one necessarily really talks about the dirty stuff, the washing of dishes, the getting rid of human excrement and waste, or the fact that most of the time you're not showering for weeks on end. Now that may all depend on which part of the country you're in and at what time you're traveling. Obviously, maybe if you're in far north Queensland, you can jump in the ocean. There's lots of showers by the beach. Maybe if you're inland or driving through Victoria or New South Wales, I think you're going to find it a bit harder to find a shower or a park. That's another thing. Let's talk about parking. And I'm sure any van lifer here knows that when you drive through one of these big cities, it's a freaking nightmare to find a park. And this kind of comes back to the question of the size of your van. And it is a bit of a trade-off because on one hand, if you've got the money, you could get some beautiful RV, pretty much motorhome, which will have a shower, a toilet, and all the necessary necessities. But let's be honest, how many of us actually have over 100 grand to spend on one of these kind of vans? Most of the time, I would say all these people are driving things like a Mitsubishi Express. I would say in my travels that was the most common van, or a Toyota Hiace. Let's also not forget about the heat. Now, I've always been a little bit obsessed with having a lot of power because I have a lot of electronical things and I like to film and charge all my equipment. But I would say the average Joe isn't carrying 4 to 5 car batteries underneath their bed like I was. At night, it can get hot or it can get cold. But once you're traveling around Northern Territory or far north Queensland, it's hot all year round and you're gonna need a good 2 or 3 or 4 fans if you don't have some sort of portable air conditioning unit in your van. And then you've also got to be able to power that unit and then hope the next day you have more power left to keep your fridge running. Now, while van life can be a more affordable way than staying in hotels, you do forego a lot of luxuries, and currently the price of petrol is sitting anywhere between $2 to $3 per litre. I was traveling around Australia when it was only $1 per litre, and that actually wasn't even that long ago. The prices jumped a lot. So that also begs the question, now that we're spending almost double, sometimes even triple on fuel, is it even worth it? Have you actually figured out the costs of how much it's actually going to cost to get to all these different destinations you want to see? Not to mention that these days there's a rental crisis and people are just living in their vans. You can go to places like Byron Bay and, well, finding a park there is next to impossible. And I know it's everyone's dream to go live in a van in Byron Bay, but the reality of it is you're going to struggle to get parking, and if you do find parking, it's going to be metered pay parking. So basically what I'm trying to say is I want to debunk a little bit of all these myths that we see online that this life is some sort of amazing, great way of living. And if you want my honest opinion, I just see it as another fad that Instagram has pushed, and now people are just buying to the reality that van life is the thing to do. Now, don't get me wrong, I had some amazing experiences. One of the best places I went to was Baird Bay on the Eyre Peninsula, and I took my little boat at the bottom of my van, I pumped it up, put the engine on, and went over to this island and got to swim and play with seals. And that truly was one of the most amazing experiences I've had in Australia, and not just in Australia, in my life. Another thing a lot of people don't talk about, and I think this can be different for other people, if you're a person that maybe finds it hard to sleep, or maybe you're used to a certain amount of hours per night, and once you get those hours you're awake, well, when it comes to van life, pretty much when the sun goes down, you don't have much left to do. I'm not trying to diss or rag on van life, I just want to kind of expose a bit of the truth and the reality of the things that people don't talk about. Personally, I love driving. So it gives me the time to think, it gives me the time to ponder, and it gives me the time to dream. Now, after my first van exploded, and it's still sitting on an Nullarbor, I ended up having a friend that was a few days behind me to bring me another car. I drove to Perth, bought another van, drove that up to Exmouth and back, and then got rid of that van before going back to Cairns, getting on a boat, sailing to Darwin, and then hiring another van and driving back to Melbourne. The third van I got finally was the first time I had a high top. And while on my sailing expedition, I did bring a really nice camping toilet with me because there wasn't one on the boat. So when I had that toilet in the van, I gotta say, this was finally a luxury that I was like, why didn't I do this before? Although, another thing people don't mention, you'll be driving with the smell of your own feces. But is that the trade-off we have for having a toilet in our van? So, if any of you that has done the van life trip around Australia, I think you can safely say yes, parking is an issue. While there is many of these free great camping spots all along Australia, a lot of them don't sit on the beach. So I just really wanted to debunk that myth that we are waking up on the beach. Now sure, you can go to some caravan parks that are on the beach, but you'll be paying a premium to stay there. So maybe before you go out and spend all your money on that new fancy van that you've been dreaming about, maybe try it out first a couple of days with another friend, and then see if this is actually the life for you before going all in. Now, I do have some friends that happily live in their vans and are more than comfortable. Personally, it's not for me. I just like my creature comforts. I just wanted to shed some light on the things that people don't talk about. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you found this informative, hit that like and subscribe button and tell us your stories on your van life adventures.